The Success in South Florida podcast is brought to you by the team at Rawson Law Firm. If you need DUI or criminal defense representation, call the Rawson Law Firm at 754-206-6200 or check the description of today's episode for more contact information. The Rawson Law Firm, helping good people when bad things happen so they can achieve their best futures.
Welcome to Success in South Florida, featuring interviews with entrepreneurs, leaders, and other movers and shakers across South Florida to find out how they're doing their part to enhance the local community. Your host is Adam Rawson, the founder and CEO of the Rawson Law Firm. Adam's an award-winning attorney, former prosecutor, and a lifelong South Florida resident. He became an attorney because he believes in helping those in need and in crafting lifelong relationships in the community. This podcast is an extension of that mission. Let's get to today's interview. Here's Adam Rawson.
All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Success in South Florida podcast. I am your host, Adam Rawson, and on today's episode, I have Marissel Descalzo, criminal, federal, white-collar, government healthcare lawyer extraordinaire. She is a total badass, amazing attorney, and I'm so glad, Marissel, to have you on our show. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Adam.
Yeah, of course. Just introduce yourself a little bit about who you are, your background, to our listeners.
Sure. I mean, I think you did a fine job. I practice in the white collar criminal defense space. I've always been a criminal defense attorney. I've never been on the government side, always on the defense side. And, I have a niche practice in healthcare fraud cases, just because that really interests me. But I also do a lot of Foreign Corrupt Practices Act cases and money laundering cases and all sorts of things.
Perfect. So I was going to wait to ask you this question, but since you brought it up right away, I'm going to ask it right away. You said you've never worked for the government. You've never been a prosecutor. So President of the United States puts you on the short list to be the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. What do you do and why?
I really don't think that I would want that job, to be completely honest with you. The reason I was never a prosecutor, even though I contemplated it for some time, and the partner that I used to work with for many, many years was a prosecutor, and he suggested I should go to the U.S. Attorney's office, is because I never want to sentence anybody, right? I never want to be put in the position where I am, putting people in jail. I don't think I can stomach it. And I think while the U.S. Attorney is not in court, prosecuting cases, I think that they have a handle on that and making policies about, putting people in jail. And I think that while I would love to control those types of policies as the U.S. Attorney, I think I would probably have to follow mandates from the Department of Justice, which I would not agree with. So I don't think I would take that job.
Okay. All right.
I would say, give me something else.
let me increase it. Attorney General of the United States.
Now that I would do.
Okay. So that's the level where you could be swayed to work for the government. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. And of course, I wouldn't disagree with that choice for you either, if that, were to happen one day. Now, and we kind of continue on with this. So I was a prosecutor. I was only a prosecutor for 18 months. I left because I didn't like a lot of the politics behind it. And I was a state prosecutor, not a federal prosecutor, but I didn't like a lot of that. I didn't like how I couldn't control my future, my destiny. And I struggled balancing wanting to give people chances with some of the mandates that we had. For very serious cases, I was okay sentencing people to prison, but I wanted to make sure that it fit the crime and gave them a chance to rehabilitate themselves when they came out. And I think overall, there's such huge sentencing disparities between states and state versus federal, and even counties within states. It's really hard. But I didn't like that I had to really get the police officers' backs and have to, feel as though I was defending them. And again, I worked in Broward. Broward is traditionally one of the tougher ones, or probably the toughest in South Florida. And we didn't have a lot of discretion. And so that really bothered me. And, that was one of the things that led for me to leave to start my own firm. But at our firm, we don't hire any lawyer unless they truly love people, love defending people. It's not about a love of criminal law. And that's why, at least to this date, we don't have any other former prosecutors besides myself. So I want to hear a little bit about, from you, just about further, kind of deeper about defending people. What's that like to get to know them? and to really fight for them and have their lives and their future in your hands. And, and why, if you think that the defense side is so much more powerful and, in a way kind of helping the community more than the prosecutors are.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I do think that we as defense attorneys help people more and help the community more. And first of all, when I am representing a client, it's not only the client, it's their family, it's their significant others, and it's a 24/7 job. You're a therapist, you're a attorney, you are so many things to these people. You're everything to them, and you really
sometimes you're their last bastion of hope. Right.
Right. You are. And it's these people, think I have clients that think I'm part of their family. Right. And because I was so, in their business for a long time, trying to help them get out of a mess, or when you really help someone, they're eternally grateful to you because, you saved them from jail or from, maybe they went to jail for 6 months, but you saved them from a life sentence. And so the consequences are really, really high. And that puts a lot of onus on the attorney, but it also makes me very passionate about my clients and their people, and you get to humanize them, and that's the nice thing about the job, because these people most of the time, my clients are not repeat offenders. It was a moment in time that they made a mistake. I also know that a lot of clients who are repeat offenders, maybe that's because I do the Criminal Justice Act wheel, which means I get appointed cases by the court, and some of those people. And I do that as kind of a giving back community service kind of thing. And some of those clients that I get from there are repeat offenders, but they're kind of a product of their situation, right? Maybe they have a drug problem and they never got to, they've never had the opportunity to go to rehab. And, it's important to advocate for those people and tell their story so that maybe they can, reform somehow in some way and do better. So I think our job is more important than the prosecutors, because prosecutors are just solely focused on, many of them cannot see the other side of things until they leave and go into private practice.
Right. And I'd like to say that I was, a perfect prosecutor and very even keeled and balanced, but, I was, but I wasn't in some ways too. Right. In some ways it's just, well, I got to follow, be a company man and follow the mandates given, because I like my healthcare and I like my benefits and I like my career. That can be very frustrating when we're dealing with people, human beings.
Yeah. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I have some prosecutors that I have great relationships with that are super fair. And they tell me, Marissel, and agree to disagree. Like, I think none of my clients should go to jail. Right. And so I know that that's unreasonable, but don't also be, I just had a court appointed case, a woman who is looking at a 30-month sentence max who's the mother of 3 kids. And they, filed a detention motion and wouldn't give her bond. And she ended up having to stay in jail for a week for no reason. And it's just like, that's unreasonable. Why do that? Like, you knew that she didn't qualify for bond, that she didn't qualify for detention. So I don't know. I just think, like, if both sides were all human, things would work a lot better.
Right. And one of the things that I really, it just frustrates me is we may have an adult 30-year-old, 40-year-old man who did something bad. But then when we dive deep and we realize that when that person was 5 or 10, they had significant childhood trauma, and they might have been the victim of, crimes themselves, whether it was reported and convicted or never reported. And we can all agree that that 5 or 10-year-old little boy needs help, needs savings, needs the system to intervene. But then when the system fails that little boy and that boy becomes a 40-year-old man who maybe did something egregious, it's so easy for people to say, throw him in jail and lock him in jail and throw away the key. And to me, that kind of, that hypocrisy is something that I've struggled with over the years. When you get to know people's stories, their backstory, their origin story, right? If they were a Marvel superhero, right? And really deal with the trauma. So have you seen instances like that through your practice over the years?
Unfortunately, I've seen too many instances like that. And there usually is something behind, I know that, the government always wants to characterize everything as, oh, people commit crimes, it's greed, or, they're a horrible person, but there's always a story. And, and it's, I like finding out those stories. I like talking to people and figuring that out and having, my clients become comfortable enough where they can tell me those things. And, hopefully we can somehow not only get them help, but get, humanize them in front of the court.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So Marissel, let's go back a little bit. Where did you grow up, and did you always want to be a lawyer?
So I'm originally from Chicago, but I've been living here long enough in Miami that I'm a native. I've always wanted to be a lawyer ever since I was a little girl, and not necessarily a criminal defense lawyer, but I always wanted to be a lawyer. And, so I knew right away when I went to college, get through college, go straight to law school.
Okay. And you went to the University of Miami, right?
I did.
Okay. So that's where I went for. Now, did you go for undergrad and law school or just law school?
I didn't. So for undergrad, I actually went to UF and
Go Gators.
And then I came back home to the University of Miami for law school.
Okay, so that's the exact same path that I did, that I took. And so by the time that you're a young 1L at UM Law, did you know that you wanted to do criminal defense then, or was there something about your time in law school?
I think it was a combination of, I took a lit skills in law school, which is a litigation skills course, and it has a courtroom component and it has a writing component. And it was the professors that were in those courses that were actual practicing criminal defense lawyers. They're not law school teachers that really paved the way to really get me interested in criminal defense.
Yeah. I had a great experience there as well. So, and walk me through, why did you go, federal as opposed to state?
So I think I just fell into that, to be honest with you. I probably did not recognize the difference when I first started practicing law. When I graduated from law school, my parents were like, you need to take the job that pays you the most money, right?
Okay.
My parents, immigrant parents, they don't know any better. And so that's what I did. But I got lucky because there was a lawyer there, Richard Sharpstein, who has passed away. But he was one of the best criminal defense lawyers in the country. And so I got close to him, and he would let me watch him do things, and I'd go to court and I'd work on some of his cases. And so I knew right away that I wasn't going to stay at that firm. I knew that I wanted to go to this firm called Zuckerman Spader, which was a big, it's one of a big white collar boutique in national practice. They had a Miami office at the time. Zuckerman wouldn't hire me right out of law school, but I knew that, a year in, I was just going to keep trying. And so after being at a year at my first firm, I applied to Zuckerman and I got the job. And Zuckerman just predominantly handled federal cases, even though I think the first case I took to trial happened to be a state court case. But it was a really complicated public corruption case. So I just kind of fell into that.
And going through that process, I mean, then was there ever a point where you're like, okay, this is it. This is going to be my career, and I absolutely fell in love?
I think I've always been in love with it. I will tell you, after every, trial that I lose, because we lose a lot doing what I do, every sentence that a judge gives a client of mine that I don't agree with, I have to go through my mourning period where I'm like, I'm going to go, open up a cheese shop. I'm going to go work at the garden section of Home Depot. I'm going to quit this. I'm going to go do personal injury. These are all things that go through my head. And then I eventually come back to what I love, because I do love what I do. And I do a little bit of civil work too. But I just don't like it as much. I'm very passionate about this. I think this is just, for me, it's the be all end all in my career. It's fascinating and it's intellectually challenging, and I enjoy it.
Right. Well, and how many lawyers and or just professionals or people in general can say they do something that they truly love, not just something that pays the bills for 8 hours a day? And as you know, what we do is not 8 hours a day. It's much, much more. But when I believe when you have that passion behind it, it really truly means something when you're out there fighting the fight every day, in order to, I think, make our community a better place and to help people. So I think when we as trial lawyers go through that mourning phase, stage period, we lose a little bit of piece of us through every case or every loss.
Yeah.
But the fact that it always brings you always come back to center eventually, right? You know that this is what you were meant to do.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it takes longer than others, but it is, I always come back, and it's true. It's like a mourning period that you have.
Right. But look, the alternative is to just punch in and punch out, and right. And kind of, feel like you're living in a simulation, which we still may be, we don't know, but, but to really have that feeling day in and day out, kind of some of that emptiness, I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes I'll drive home and I'll just not put on any music, and I'll just sit there and go, oh, all right, I helped so many people today. Who's going to help me? Right. Like where's, like it was a tough one or a tough week, but then every Father's Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, the text messages that I get from clients and their families, it makes everything all worth it. So like in our firm, the Ross & Law Firm, we always, anytime we have a story to tell about a great win, it's, yes, we're excited for us, but it's also, we kind of do hashtag, this is why we do what we do. And we tell the family's story. Internally, we usually do that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do get a lot of calls on Mother's Day and Christmas and my birthday, and and my clients call me to check in on me, and they want to take me out to lunch all the time. And it's funny, my husband doesn't understand it. He's like, I don't understand. He's like a business person, and he's like, I don't understand why these people are so close to their lawyer. And I'm like, it's not. I'm not a corporate lawyer. It's different. I'm all in their business.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know things about your clients that their spouses and parents don't even know.
Right? Yeah. So it's different. So it is very rewarding, even though it's taxing.
Right. Okay. So, you're this young hotshot attorney associate, you get to Zuckerman Spader, and then, so walk us through kind of what that time period was like, and how did you eventually leave there to go to your current firm?
So I feel like it was luck. I got paired up with a partner there, Michael Bozzano, who's still one of my dearest, closest friends today. And, Michael Bozzano tries cases all the time. And when I started working at Zuckerman, Bozzano was trying like 4 or 5 cases, 6 cases, federal cases a year. I mean, I remember we had it's a lot. We had like a 9-month trial in Orlando once. He had an 18-month trial the trial went for 18 months in Puerto Rico. He had these massive big cases, and, he needed an associate, and his associates wouldn't last. He would like go through his associates, and somehow I stayed with Michael for, I think Michael and I worked with Michael for maybe 13 or 14 years, maybe 15 years, for a really long time. And so we just worked well together, and it was phenomenal. And we still worked together. I mean, we tried a case together last year, and because of him, I was able to get all this trial experience and learn from one of the best in the business. And I learned a lot from him. And so at some point, there's an issue at Zuckerman. They decide to close the Miami office. So all the partners at Zuckerman in the Miami office, plus me, and I think one other associate, we moved to Carlton Fields. And I keep working with Michael until I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I have to spread my own wings. I can't, keep living under the, his shadow. I want my own big cases. I want to take my own big case to trial. I want to be first chair. And so that's when I decided to open up my own firm, which Michael, understood. But because of him, I was trying so many cases. And so that's another reason when, it came to a point in my career where most lawyers are like, okay, we're going to go to the federal public defender's office, or we're going to go to the U.S. attorney's office to get more experience. I was like, but why would I do that? I'm trying such complicated cases. What, I'm going to go back to doing major, like drug cases now when I'm trying these complicated fraud cases. So, so I decided not to do that. And it worked out for me, and it was great.
Right. Well, I always say being a young prosecutor or PD is like residency in medical school. And so you just kind of skipped residency. You graduated, you got your degree, and you started practicing, right away. Yeah. And I mean, if you're, it's so rare, but if you're able to really do that, I mean, that's, why go through the growing pains of being a young PD when you can do it, on a much grander stage and learn. Again, white collar, right? The real complex. I mean, anybody can try a violent crime once you try one. They're pretty similar, drug cases or robbery, right? But when you're trying these really interesting cases that are probably 20 layers deep and even more, that's where you really kind of grow.
Really, and they're my cases are very document intensive, and the financial aspect of the cases is also complicated. So it's just different. I've done the shorter violent crime case. I'm going to actually do my first murder trial this year. I'm going to second chair a murder trial just because I wanted a challenge. So I agreed to do that.
Federal or state? It's
going to be state. It's a state. It's an interesting, it's a 20-year-old cold case, murder case that got indicted like 20 years later.
Very interesting. Well, at least you'll get discovery on this.
Yes. it's what a difference. It's like so crazy. Like they dump everything, like they give you everything. It's just very different, the practice. But anyways, that's neither here nor there.
Okay. So Marissel, you are in big law. You moved to Carlton Fields. You're getting, appears to be everything you could want out of the practice of law. You're trying big cases, you have an amazing mentor, except being kind of that, the leading lady, right? Lead actor in the show. Walk us through the process of you saying, hey, and again, this isn't 2 years in. So like when I left the prosecutor's office, I was 26. I was used to not making much money. My loans were in deferment. I was not married, didn't have a girlfriend. I had nothing to lose, right? You're presumably making good money. You said you're about 13, 14 years into the practice of law. I don't know if you have any children at this point yet, but that's probably a lot scarier to go on your own at that point than it was for me. So walk us through that decision-making process for you.
It was scary. It was a very big step. I thought about it a lot before I did it. Had many discussions with my husband about it, who was super supportive. And I think that's, it goes without saying, without a supportive spouse, I could not do half the things I do. So I'm very lucky. And, being fiscally responsible leading up to the decision, because it's so scary. And it still, I don't know about you, Adam, but I'm always like, when is the next case coming? Is the phone going to ring? Do I have enough cases? Like, it's always constantly in my brain. And I hate that, but I am, because, that's how we make money. And so I was really, really nervous, but I knew, if I didn't do it, I was never going to do it. And so I took the leap, and it worked out. And it's not been, it's not for the faint of heart. Like I said, like anytime it's slow, I'm freaking out, and, I don't have enough cases. And then, because my cases don't come in every day, right? Because they're not small cases. So it's a little bit different the way the flow works, but I won't get a case for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, I'll get 3 phone calls, and it's just,
and
it's
three,
just crazy.
3 cases for you is, oh my God, I'm super busy, because they're major cases.
Yeah. And so, I've been blessed. I've had, I don't even know, my referral sources continuously change. I'm always trying to figure out new, marketing ideas, but it was scary. And it was also a learning experience, because you have to learn the business of everything, right? When you're at a big firm, they handled all that stuff for me. I didn't have to worry about any of the business stuff. So that was a big change as well.
Right. Definitely something back when, around when we went to UM Law, they did not teach in law school at all. It was kind of, going big law was supported, but being a solo lawyer or a small firm lawyer was kind of frowned upon. Then I just don't know why, but I think it generally is in law school, and they don't teach you how to run a successful firm, which really, if you think, from what I've heard, the vast majority of bar complaints to small and solo lawyers have to do with running the business aspect, not with their skills and abilities as a lawyer. So I think it's something, everybody's big on now lawyer wellness. Well, if lawyers knew how to run a better business, they'd probably be happier and being able to give more for their clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So what we're going to do right now, Marissel, is we're going to take a little quick break for our commercial break from the Rawson Law Firm, and we'll come back, and I have a ton more questions for you. So we'll be right back.
When something bad happens, who do you turn to? In South Florida, the answer is the Rawson Law Firm. Criminal and DUI defense for when bad things happen to good people. The Rawson Law Firm is a team of 8 criminal defense attorneys, including 2 board-certified criminal trial experts. They also have federal and white-collar divisions in the practice. To learn more about the team and how they can help you, connect on Facebook and Instagram at Rawson Law Firm. You'll also find helpful and entertaining videos on Rawson Law Firm YouTube channel. Just check this episode's description for all the ways you can connect.
All right, and we are back on the Success in South Florida podcast with Marissel Descalzo. Marissel, again, thank you for being here. And, we've been diving deep kind of into your background, your history in the law. So I want to get into your podcast and some other things, all the amazing things that you're doing. But before we do, you have your firm now. You are, you kind of control your own destiny. You are the star of the show on your, cases, which sometimes can last, you could be I know you're in trial for months at a time, right? Mm-hmm. So how are things for you now as the business owner, the head, the face, right, of your niche and your division, and being really a major player in the, I won't even say South Florida, but nationwide, federal and healthcare, fields?
it's a lot of work. Managing the business aspect of it is a lot of work too. I mean, I have a partner. There's two other named partners, but really Steve Bonus is retired. So it's really just Walter Taché and I. But Walter handles mostly the civil stuff and I handle all the criminal stuff. And it's hard to balance everything. It's a lot of hours, a lot of sleepless nights. And then you have to add to that, my personal life, my marketing life, because if you don't market, you don't get new cases and networking. Right. And so it's a lot. It's hard to manage everything.
Yeah. And so, being an adult, a mother, a wife, how do you try? I mean, are there specific things that do you and your husband have certain kind of agreements on who does what? Do you have any of the mom guilt, right? Because I have some dad guilt at times, and my wife is being a state prosecutor in Palm Beach. Her and I talk all the time about sometimes when she has, she's in a murder case or something, and she has mom guilt, but she loves it, and she never wants to let it go. So, we found a pretty happy and healthy balance. But what do you do?
So I have constant mom guilt, right? It's just constant, especially because a lot of I run into a lot of stay-at-home moms. And so for whatever reason in my children's classes, there's a lot of stay-at-home moms. So I always feel judgment, whether they're judging me or not. I feel it. I feel like I'm being judged because I'm not, the home mom. I can't be the home room mom. I just can't do that. It's unrealistic for me to do that. Now, do I try to go to every event I can? I do. Do I help with homework? Yes. Am I there for, ballet recitals and soccer games? Yes. But can I make every single soccer game? No. Can I go, I can't do everything. I can't be everywhere. I can't at once. And so, I think that my husband and I don't have any set roles or agreements other than he knows that, when I'm in trial, and the kids know too, when I'm in trial, I'm in trial. That means, you probably cannot reach me between 8:30 and 6:00. Might not even answer if you call me later. I mean, when my kids call, they're very important to me. So don't get me wrong. I try to answer the phone, but I might not be able to. And they get it. And my husband's very supportive. The only thing he requires of me is that every year he likes to go to this beer fest in Cincinnati. I'm just remembering this because it's going to happen soon. And so I can, under no circumstances, the weekend of that beer fest, it's like an Oktoberfest. He meets his friends there and they go to football games. And I don't know what they do. And I that is blocked out on my calendar, in January, that I cannot do anything that weekend because I must stay home with the kids. So, and I give him that, and he's so wonderful. And he and I, and it's also hard to maintain a marriage, right? Because I'm okay, so I have mom guilt. So when I'm home, I want to be with my kids 24/7 or spoiling them or, when I finish a trial, I'm I haven't seen the kids but I haven't also seen my husband. And it's kind of my kids, we realized early on that our children were going to grow up and go to college and leave us. And then it'd be the two of us. So we better get along. Right. And so I am very purposeful in making an effort to date my husband. I do that. I enjoy spending time with him. And if I'm not in trial, I try to go at least to dinner with him once a week, just the two of us, or to take a walk together or something. Because if not, you just don't have time to know each other. It's very hard. And I'm sure you know.
Yeah. And you can wake up one day, because I'm sure you and I we've seen it where we have friends that have woke up one day and go, we've kind of grown apart. What happened here? Yeah. And I know for, me and my wife, we never want to be that way. And so, yeah, it's about making every moment that you can count and being very intentional about it. And look, men are simple creatures. We just want our beer fest. That's it. Yeah. Just give us, we're not complicated. Just give us our beer fest and we're happy, and a date night a week and we're happy, right?
Yeah, he's pretty good. It's pretty simple.
But I also think it's really cool. I mean, how old are your children now?
Well, now they're 13 and 10. They're so
okay. So do you take them have they ever been to watch you in federal court or in the office? And do they kind of, do they see mom as Superwoman in any way? Because I think they're getting to that age where they may be able to, which is pretty inspiring for children to see.
So, they have never seen me in court because for whatever reason, the last couple of trials where I felt that they were old enough to come to and that the subject matter was okay for them to be part of, they was out of town. And so they couldn't come. They have come to the office a ton of times. And I think the older one, I've taken her around to the courthouse on career day. And she's kind of met the judges. So she has a better understanding of what I do. My younger one, so funny. She was she Googled me in her classroom. And so of course, all this stuff comes up and she's pretty savvy. And she's like, well, mom, she's still 10. I mean, she's very smart. She's very bright. But she just wasn't as interested as the 13-year-old is in what I do until she Googled me. And she had all these questions. And so that was fun. And she's like, wow, my mom's like, I can Google her. And she like comes up. That's
right.
really cool.
My mom's famous.
Yeah. They're like, my mom's Google famous. I'm like, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now exactly. You got some street cred for the younger generation. So
yeah.
She's actually kind of cool. So yeah, but I mean, so, you do have that aspect, and that's something that, my children are 9 months and 4, and I want them to see what we do. I want to have intelligent conversations about the law and about justice and social justice and just life. I have 2 boys with my boys, and I think it's really cool to do. My wife's in it, being a prosecutor in criminal law, that we've kind of talked about having that, life with our children where they can understand, what we do and who we are and how we kind of separate things, and just, rather than just somebody, oh yeah, dad goes to the factory and punches in and punches out every day, or the office for that matter.
I do talk to my kids all the time about, justice issues and even my cases, because they're with me. And like, for example, let's call him Joe. Client Joe calls, like Joe becomes part of my life for like 2 years. And so my kids are like, oh, she's talking to Joe again. And, so what did Joe do? And like, they have their questions, and you kind of explain it to them, and they have their own theories of like, who's guilty and who's not guilty, and why, should they go to jail? Should they not go? It's fascinating, like listening to their little brains. It's almost like a, jury consultant talking to them. So I do enjoy that. It's a lot of fun. And the older they get, the more interesting.
And these are also conversations that I have with my wife, as, we are 2 highly educated people, but I'll say, I would argue that your children are learning more about life and, and critical thinking and just benefiting overall more from having those conversations with you than they are sitting in a 6th grade world history class or, an 8th grade algebra class. I mean, I don't know. I just think that these conversations are what really, shape young people these days. So much more than school.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It really does. And, I get calls from, especially with my older one, cause she's more outspoken. I get calls from teachers all the time. They're like, are you, she's sharing these opinions in class. Are you, where does she get this from? Like it was civics, right? And they're learning about the Bill of Rights, and she has all these opinions. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I'm a lawyer and we talk about these things. I don't tell her to say these things to you, but
I'd be grinning from ear to ear going, yes, that is my child.
Yeah.
Right. And, and as long as they can explain the why behind their beliefs, there is no right or wrong. As it's just take a position and explain why you believe it to be right. So that's amazing. That's got to be so cool. And I'm personally looking forward to developing that much more with my children. So
you'll love it. It's great.
All right. So let's talk about your podcast. So Athena Rising podcast. So you are one of the 2 co-hosts. And so talk to me, how did that get started?
So Vanessa and my co-host, Vanessa Johanna Singh, who's also a criminal defense lawyer, we were in a very long trial together. And in that trial, we decided, we were there was a female prosecutor and there was the 2 of us on the defense side, but the judge would always defer to the male prosecutor and to the male defense lawyer. And we're like, and we were talking, I'm like, we need something to celebrate women lawyers, because we don't think that there's enough that's done to celebrate women lawyers. And I think that, we are kind of a minority community, and I hate to use that word, but there's not a lot of us, out there, and not a lot of us that are doing the sophisticated work. So, we wanted to come up with a way to celebrate women and give women a platform to talk about themselves, to market themselves, but also, give the younger female lawyers an opportunity to listen to all the different career paths that people can take and listen to all these success stories. And that's how it came about. And look, it's a lot of work, as you have your podcast, and it is just so much work. We don't have a production team. It's just the 2 of us. And, Vanessa's on editing because I'm the worst at tech, right? I'm like an 80-year-old, woman who never had a computer when it comes to technology. I'm getting better, but it's tough. So it's a lot of work, but I've really, really enjoyed it. And I've had the opportunity to interview some super interesting women, and we're going to, we're expanding now. We're going to start, not only focusing on women, but focusing on, we call them the Allies series. So people that, are not, men who support women and, their stories. And so it's just been really, really great. And I've enjoyed it. And, we've gotten good feedback. So I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I've listened to a bunch and I love the format, the 36 questions to powerhouse female lawyers. Absolutely love it.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's about, look, I completely get it. Women elevating women. I wish we didn't have to live in a world where that was necessary. But of course, the fact that we do, it's right on. That's what we have to do. I believe in elevating, everybody who wants it and needs it. The stories that I've heard on your podcast are just absolutely amazing. So keep it up. It's been great. And how do you get the female lawyers to be on your show? Is it just people that you know so far, or have you reached out for any kind of big whales that you wanted to speak with?
Everyone that has been on so far, we've asked. It's a person that we know, but now we're to the point where we have a huge list of people that are reaching out to us saying they want to be on, and so it's a lot of people, and it's actually some pretty fascinating people that want to be on the podcast. So I think we're doing something right.
Yeah. And it just kind of crowdsources, right? It just, steam, it just gathers some steam, and exactly. And now you have people listening and they say, wow, this is doing, what you're doing is really cool. And I know even for me, I'm like, who, me? Like, okay, I'm glad you like it. That's amazing. Let's keep it going. Yeah. So, so anybody who's listening to this, it's the Athena Rising podcast, and I highly recommend it. You have the videos on YouTube, and, you have it at Apple, Spotify, pretty much everywhere. So that's awesome.
Thank you for the plug, Adam.
Oh, absolutely. Marissel, what advice would you give to any young, either attorney or non-attorney, but somebody who's young and wanting to make a mark in their life or their career, kind of like a young version of you or a young version of me?
So this is not my advice. I actually got this from somebody who was on my podcast, and it's the best advice I've ever heard. And it's that you are your own brand. And this was from, and I'll say her name, Yolanda Strader, was on our podcast, and she was actually the first one that we interviewed, and she said this, and she's a powerhouse lawyer. She's great. She does very well for herself, just opened up her own firm. And I thought, wow, that is so true. And what does that mean? That means you are your own brand. That means you have to market yourself. Everything that you do has to be to better yourself. And whether you're working at a firm, whether you're a marketing executive, or whether you're an accountant, you are your business, right? You are your brand. Right. And I think maybe that's something that when you're in the grind at a big firm, or you're in the grind when you're just out of college, you're not thinking about, you're just thinking about, I got to make partner, I got to do better, I got to make more money. But no, like if you start branding yourself when you're younger, you can kind of jump around and maybe really make a mark for yourself. And so I think that's the best advice I've gotten in a long time.
Yeah. And that's something that I wish I knew when I was 16 or 18 or 22. Yeah. I like to think it's an iterative process, get 1% better every day. Me at 42, I'm not who I was at 32 or 22, right? Or 15, but I wish at a younger age, I thought in that way. And I was just, I was a smart kid who wanted to be a lawyer, but I wasn't that gunner, so to speak, where I'm thinking about, okay, I need to do this by this point and meet these people. And, I was the one, I personally didn't enjoy Law School. I love lit skills. I love my 3L classes, but I just didn't like it. It was a little too archaic and just kind of old school for me. I also didn't like the fact that the curve was a C back then.
Yeah,
it was kind of hard to be like, wow, I actually tried, and how did I get a C plus? That's not cool. But for me, I didn't like it, but I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if maybe I took a year or two break between undergrad and law school, just to kind of mature up and realize, hey, this is, treat law school like a job. I started doing that for the bar prep. And then obviously when I became a prosecutor, and that kind of changed a lot for me with that. But yeah, the younger you are when this kind of stuff clicks, I think the better, the higher upward trajectory you can have. And I think that's amazing advice, because it's reputation, it's connections, it's, you are your brand, and marketing doesn't have to necessarily be billboards, right? Or digital. It's you, it's your reputation. It's who it's connections. It's knowing that you are a good person, a trustworthy person, and a person who stands by their word and is going to do an amazing job for people. Right. So that's amazing. And then You talked a little bit about some of the, like the two mentors that you had in the white collar space. What other role, especially now, do mentors play with you? And have you taken on some younger attorneys to be the, kind of give back and be the mentor and let them be the mentee?
I feel like in this job that we do, you're never too old or too experienced or too knowledgeable or too good to learn. I am very lucky that I have, relationships with some of the best attorneys in the country, best criminal defense attorneys in the country that I can call and ask questions. And so I know that not everybody's not everybody has that, but I do. And I do phone a friend all the time. But I don't take that lightly, the fact that I can do that. And so I make myself available to anyone who wants to call me with a question, to the point that my husband's like, are you even working on that case? Why are you talking to that person for an hour and a half on the phone? Like, you should be at dinner. And I'm like, no, yeah. And I'm like, no, because I have to give back. And it doesn't have to be necessarily young female attorneys. It's, it's male attorneys. So somebody called me last night about a sentencing and I discussed it with him. And, people call me all the time and I always pick up the phone. My door is always open and everyone knows that about me. And you know what? And sometimes sometimes the more senior lawyers call me for advice now. Right. And I give them advice too. Right. And because everybody has a different way of thinking and you might have a different idea. And so I think mentors are always important. I think they've evolved into friendships now. But that is a constant in my life. And I'm lucky to have that.
Right. And I know you've been an amazing mentor to David Terrace from the Rossin Law Firm. I mean, and you spoke to our interns and gave them just some amazing advice. And yeah, I think that's what it's all about, is just paying it forward. And I've always found that in general, the criminal defense bar is very collaborative. I don't know what it is about us, at least from my perspective. Maybe it's because we all feel like we're the underdogs fighting the good fight, but generally speaking, there's some really good people out there that are always willing to give up their time to help a fellow attorney. So I'm glad that you've had that experience before. So the final question that I'm going to ask you, I don't ask everybody this, but I think for you, it's very appropriate.
Okay.
Do you? No, it's a good one. It's gonna, some people really have to think about it. Some people know immediately. Do you love to win or do you hate to lose? And why?
Oh, that is a good question. And I will tell you, in all things, I hate to lose. I don't like to lose at a board game with my children. I do not like to lose in court. And the reason why is I don't know if it's because I'm ultra competitive. I don't know if it's an ego thing. I think it's all of the above. I'm a perfectionist. It's all of those things, but I definitely hate to lose.
Yeah. And that's my answer. And we've had it across the board. It's varied between the two with everybody that I've asked. And, I really like hearing the why behind it, but I'm with you 100%. And maybe that's something I'm still trying on my journey of self-discovery to find out why that is, but that's just the way that I'm wired. I think the pain of losing for me is so much more intense than the joy of winning, which I'm not saying that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not, but it's just the way that I'm wired, and I'm trying to get better at that. But yeah, I completely feel you.
I will tell you, I knew how to answer that question because of something you just said. It's the joy of winning. I mean, even when I've had my wins, I always dwell on, well, you know what? I could have still done something better. This is, and I don't really celebrate the wins, but the losses hit me pretty hard. So, I don't like to lose.
Right. And I'm trying to get better personally myself, on that thing, again, the journey of self-discovery and just improving. But yeah, I'm with you 100%. So Marissel, what's the best way for anybody listening to this to reach out, to find you, talk to you, whether it's, email, phone, social media? How can somebody say, you know what, I need to reach out to her?
So I am always available by email, which is mdescalzo@tashebronis.com. I also have LinkedIn, which I'm active on, which is my most active social media. I'm on Instagram, but not as active. And but I'm always available by email, and anyone can email me, and you can get me on the phone, and we'll chat.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. I had a blast talking. Anytime I can talk to you, I love it. So thank you very much. And, hopefully we can co-counsel, another fun case. I know we have one or two in the pipe or that we're working on, you and David.
We have two. We need more.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's my job. So
me too. Yeah, me too. I'm working on it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Marissel.
No, thank you. I enjoyed being on.